Hey guys, welcome back to the Nick and Joe Show. I'm Nick, he's Joe, and you're listening to the best conservative talk radio in the country. No question. Centered right here in the nation's capital, Ottawa. For those of us, for our American listeners, there's more than Ottawa, Kentucky, or Ottawa, where is that?
Illinois. Is there an Ottawa, Illinois?
Yeah, I think so.
There's a few Ottawas around.
Yeah, so we're talking about the one in Canada.
Or as our good friend Lowell Green used to call it, Sucking Central. All right, yeah, calm down, Nick. He was referring to government sucking up all those tax dollars.
Oh, I know. I just a funny way of putting it.
Yeah,
that was Lowell.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So there's that first half hour was rather interesting, and I certainly hope that the listeners we were prodding them to think, I think is what I was trying to say.
Well, that's what we do in this show. We are think prodders.
Well, that was the name of my first talk show. It was called Think Tank, but that was a long time ago.
Yes.
Yes, that was back in 2002.
Hard to believe that 2002 was a long time ago, Nick.
That's hard to believe, too, yes. Very much so.
20 years, 19 years.
Oh, man, where does that time go?
I don't know.
Neither do I.
Anyway,
I was asking you.
Some housekeeping stuff. First of all, if you're listening to the podcast, thanks for joining us. This is part 2 of this week's episode. And make sure you go back if you missed yesterday's part 1. You want to go back and listen to it. It was certainly the fireworks were the fur was flying. The fur was flying. And if you're listening live and you want to join into our conversation in the chat room, click on the chat bubble, and you may have to register. If you're already registered, you may have to log in. And that's to ensure that you're a real flesh and blood human being, not a lurking liberal or an malevolent algorithm.
Oh, I like that, lurking liberal.
A lurking liberal? Well, that's not true. We do want lurking liberals on our show listening in. Why?
Well, only if they have the courage to stand up and defend their point of view.
Well, we want to educate people. And, at some point in time, for our live listeners, we are going to go back to call-in format. It's not, we have the technology all set up to do it. We just have to have a few other points put in place, but that should be exciting because then we can actually get real live liberals, not just those people who are lurking on the internet, calling us and arguing with us in real time.
Wouldn't that be fun? In real time, that would be a blast.
Yeah. We could get your old friends from when you were on CFRA, Nick, to start calling you.
Yeah,
that should
guys
be fun.
Like Rumble and Rick and Cousin Ken, yep.
That should be fun. Anyway,
oh, boy.
Anyway.
Some of them are still alive. Anyway.
It's really almost dangerous being conservative talk radio, even on the internet, even though we're not on terrestrial radio at the moment. But we're just online, and because there's always a real chance that you're going to run into people out there who are offended, and you're going to run into the whole cancel culture problem that has hit so many of our friends, Nick, in whether on television or radio or newspaper, or just on political debate. And but now the government, I take it, is now looking at steps to actually institutionalize protecting people from being offended by people like you and I, who are, I think, very respectful in the way that we present our side of things, very conscientious, very thoughtful, but notwithstanding all of those things, Nick, you can't help in our present culture that you're going to offend people. And now the government is looking at ways, seriously looking at ways to entrench in law rules against defending people. And, I'm not saying that they're going to prosecute you and throw you in jail or fine you, although that door remains open. But what they really want to do is they want to be able to shut down internet shows or terrestrial radio shows like ours, because we're actually taking a contrary view that some people may find offensive. And this is a very troubling development as well. And it really speaks to, how twisted our society has become. And quite frankly, how weak it's become. Because if you really believe in what you're talking about, if you really believe in the position that you have, if you really believe that it's correct, shouldn't you be able to defend it in an open, honest, and intelligent debate? Shouldn't you welcome that opportunity to be able to explain why your ideas and your vision of the direction we're going is better than somebody else's? I mean, look, one of the things, and I know I'm rambling on, Nick, and then I'm going to say this and then shut up, but one of the things that politicians get accused of from time to time is flip-flopping. And I always hated that. I always hated when people would accuse my colleagues or my friends of flip-flopping. Or, conversely, I hated it when our own people, conservatives, would accuse their political opponents of flip-flopping. And, my response to this was, why would you be against people flip-flopping? Isn't the whole idea to have, as I say, open, honest, and intelligent debate? And, if people would accuse me of flip-flopping, my answer would be, no, they just persuaded me that they were right and I was wrong. Now, it doesn't happen very often.
No, that's for sure.
But when it does happen, why would you not say, okay, congratulations, you have the courage to actually stand up and say, all right, I've changed my mind, I've thought about it carefully. But no, we accuse them, even the people to whose side you are going, still accuse you of flip-flopping on it. And I always believed in the Winston Churchill principle on this. When he used to say, when they'd accuse him of flip-flopping, he'd always say, I'd rather be right than consistent.
That, what, of all his lines, that's one of his most brilliant, because that really does put it into a nutshell. And I think you're also quite right about the idea about standing up for what you believe in. And if somebody has a more compelling argument than you do, saying, all right, you know what? I've had this belief for a long time, but under this new information you've provided, or from that, I've experience and reality has tempered my view, and I think you've got a point. And I think I'm going to change my stance on that, and having the courage to be able to do that. We don't. You're quite right that we don't reward that. We vilify it, when in fact it's exactly as you point out. It should be something that people don't take for granted, but I think that, okay, obviously this guy isn't as stiff-necked as I thought he was, and that's a sign to me of more of, what's the word I'm looking for, character. It's, something like that. Now, there are certain conditions that come with that, like, it has to be, how did Churchill put that other never change, never, never, never line about never change your mind on anything, never give in, except to sound logic and good reason. And I think that's the other thing that has to go with that, is you have to be willing to use logic and good reason in your deliberations, so that when you do change your mind, you don't find out later you were right all along and you shouldn't have changed your mind. And don't do it for political expediency to make yourself look good in a certain set of circumstances. As much as I despise David Suzuki, I at least admire him for the fact that he stands up for what he believes in. The only question is, does he really believe it? And there's no way to know the answer to that, so you have to take him at face value. So we'll have to see how that goes. But I think that this whole anti-hurt my feelings law is just a big step in the wrong direction. It undermines the very foundational principles our country's built on. And the only reason I can think that they're doing it, and please correct me if you think I'm wrong, is that they don't want any criticism of government policy. This is what little tyrants do. They can't stand to be corrected or pointed out that their world vision is not in step with reality. And when you do that, you run a risk. And the risk in this case can be, pretty substantial. So we'll have to see what comes of that, but it's not a good feeling.
Well, I don't think it's because they don't want to face criticism. It's because they are convinced, without any kind of real careful self-doubt or self-reflection, they're just convinced that they're right, and they want us to be quiet, not because they can't stand criticism, but because they think that we're wrong and we're leading other people astray. And, this whole COVID thing is a good example, is that, they'd rather say, if Nick, you go on the air and you say, I really doubt the efficacy of wearing masks. And the right response to that, the sensible response to that from the other side, the pro-mask wearers, should be to say, okay, this is why we think it's a good idea to wear masks. This is why we're trying to tell people and convince them to wear masks. But instead of doing that, they say, "Oh no, you're a terrible person. You're willing to let everybody be sick. How dare you? Shut up!" And then before you know it, you're off the air, Nick. Another good example is on climate change. And the whole, not so much climate change, but the whole argument that climate change is being induced by human activity. And, someone like me, who I consider myself to be an educated person, is going to ask a simple question. Well, if CO2 is causing the climate to change, please explain to me the science behind that. And what's the first thing I get from the likes of David Suzuki is, oh, he's a climate change denier. Okay, and invective and ad hominem attacks, and that doesn't help anybody. That doesn't convince me. Yeah, I need to be convinced. I think my arguments are stronger. I think my skepticism is more sensible and more reasonable given the evidence, not just the lack of evidence, but the contrary evidence that's out there on some of this stuff. I don't deny climate change. I'm just saying that I don't believe that we're causing it, or that we're having a significant cause. And even if we were, Nick, we live in Canada. And in Canada, we produce somewhere around 1.5% of the world's entire production of greenhouse gases, so-called greenhouse gases. So here we are in Canada trying to stop climate change. And my answer is, why? We can't, even if we didn't have any emissions in Canada, we're not going to have any kind of an impact on climate change, if indeed it's being caused by human activity. So, why are we trying to stop it? Shouldn't we be spending that money getting ready for it? Because if it's being caused by human activity, it's going to happen anyway, until and unless other countries get their act together, or it's going to happen anyway, regardless of what we do, because it's not caused by human activity. So